Alright, let's catch up with a bit of news that has come out lately, and this is about NIO and what Li Bin has to say in an internal employee email released. That already happened a couple of days ago, but now I have time to catch up with it. And well, first of all, what you need to know is who is addressed with this type of letter is, of course, employees of NIO. So this is not really meant to be released to the public. However, it happened as a leak. It's not super unusual. Partly might be actually intended to have such kind of a release or scoop here. But anyways, we have to look through that lens that it's not us who are being addressed, it's not investors, it's not the public in general, but it's actually really for NIO employees. So let's have a look what's on inside here. This is the full original letter translated into English by CNEV Post. So let's just go through it. The first sentence is about a happy new year, and of course this is also setting the stage for the new year, right? In the past month, as Omicron variant spreads rapidly across China, many colleagues have been infected and the virus has taken a toll on people's health and way of life. Despite these challenges, everyone still tried to work in various ways to ensure smooth progress in terms of R&D, supply chain, production, deliveries, user service, NIO Day 2022, and many other activities. I would like to thank everyone for working diligently during this difficult time and hope affected colleagues get well soon. 2022 is an unusual year. The COVID pandemic and emergency events exerted impacts that exceeded everyone's expectations and disrupted our original pace and plan. Even in the face of myriad of challenges, we still made positive strides in 2022. We delivered 122,000 vehicles, increasing 34% year over year. We kicked off the delivery of the 3 new vehicles based on NT2 platform, namely the ET7, ES7 and ET5. We started production in F2, so the second factory, NIO Park, once again with the partner JAC. Fulfilled the infrastructure building targets such as NIO House, power swap stations and NIO service centers. We successfully held NIO Berlin and built up local teams in 5 European countries. We pushed forward new strategic business according to plan. We successfully listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, Singapore Stock Exchange during this turbulent year. There have been so many touching and unforgettable moments and stories. Thank you for all of your dedication and joint efforts. In 2022, there are pains and gains. However, it should be clear, recognize that many peers outperformed us in the same period. So with this introduction, that's kind of the resume from Li Bin's side here. It's kind of just summing up, what has happened in 2022. I would say rather on a factual side, but you can already see where he thinks things have worked and things have not worked according to plan. So for example, mainly the infrastructure side worked well with the houses, power swap stations, service centers, and also setting up and get up and going the F2 factory. These targets have been met. However, he's also saying on a comparative analysis to peers, for example, he's possibly thinking of Xiaopeng, he's possibly thinking of Tesla, BYD, maybe Li Auto, although it's a hybrid car, smart car company. He possibly had to highlight his assumption, or not assumption, but his feeling that NIO could have done better. It's going more into detail here, saying our delivery volume growth fell behind that of the overall smart EV market in China. When tackling supply chain volatilities, many companies responded more swiftly and efficiently. In the face of demand fluctuations, the inertia was too strong to make timely adjustments and avoid unnecessary losses. So it's interesting here that this comparison with other EV manufacturers, I would take with a grain of salt here, because that's what I'm kind of trying to say here oftentimes on the channel. You cannot simply compare what NIO is doing or trying to do and compare it with the likes of, let's say, Xiaopeng, BYD, and also in the future Tesla, frankly, as far as those players are competing mainly in a larger addressable market, the mass market segment, at a lower cost customer target and segment. So this is a different target segment than, for example, what NIO is trying to break in with their premium to luxury positioning in China, until we'll see some of these sub-brands of NIO going to be released. So I'm not sure if this direct comparison would make sense in terms of actual comparing delivery numbers. But maybe in terms of what he addresses here is, the plan and what actually happened within the year. So I guess what he's trying to say here is that those companies, they had also strong growth plans, and they came possibly closer to the actual plans. So for NIO here, he's pointing out that the supply chain volatilities have not been managed as well as other companies there in this regard. So what comes to my mind is that Tesla perfectly handled this, especially given that they are at much higher volumes already than NIO. So for them, of course, they're also affected by COVID, by shutdowns, by the supply chain. And we could clearly see that Tesla was taking the right steps and also had their supply chain much more under control. And they took really extreme measures also by cutting out, for example, radar, sensors, chips within the steering wheel. Partly controversially discussed there, should you be doing that or shouldn't you do that? NIO, especially with the older models, the NT 1.0 platform models, first of all, had a much more complex supply chain to start with, and a much more complex product. And so that is also, from a technical side, an engineering problem to start with, but of course also a supply chain setup that NIO simply cannot change overnight. However, he pointed out, and that's starting here, what I see continuously in this letter, talking about quickly changing and efficiencies. So let's see what he's going on talking here. The software and hardware quality issues before and after the new vehicle launch affected the reputation and word of mouth of our products. This is a very important issue here, which should be the utmost importance to NIO, frankly, because sometimes you can make compromises, I think, on sales numbers in NIO's terms, because they value customer satisfaction very high, and trying to position themselves as quality-wise higher than most competitors, and trying to really please customers, being customer-centric. And the fact that, for example, the ET7 had issues in the beginning with, for example, the casting, so that also was a production issue, but also there have been issues with hardware and software of the cars for the first customers to receive their cars, and they have been unhappy with that. In some cases, just minor cases. However, of course, that cannot be the standard that NIO wants to achieve there. They can simply not afford to have this, and that's what he's pointing out here. It's affecting our reputation, and I think partly we'll have to see how much effect this will have on the NIO brand going forward. And possibly that's just the speculation here, could have some of the impact currently on the order rates on the ET7, where we see that the deliveries have been going down. They have not reached my expectations of 4,000 to 5,000 cars delivered per month yet, and that might be certainly due to this issue, a similar problem might be with the ET5 currently, that we have a recall of less than 1,000 vehicles. It's actually a minor issue, shouldn't be involving too much cost. It can be fixed quickly, unfortunately not with an over-the-air software update, because it's a hardware issue that needs to be fixed. However, these, it's not unusual that the first cars to be produced coming from a factory are not in full swing yet and are not perfect. However, of course, when you are building your brand on it like NIO does, then this becomes a major obstacle and hurdle. And while we see this regularly in the entire automotive industry, it's something NIO should and want to avoid, and possibly even create some issues on an order level in the short term. So that's what he's pointing out here. Also the test vehicle accident, and so you remember when the test vehicle was falling off the building in Shanghai, and data leakage in the incident sounded the alarm for us to enhance internal control and management. So let's go on. We set up user satisfaction feedback mechanism, but the problem-solving speed still fell greatly short of user expectations. The organization and team expanded too quickly in the past year, while the internal communication efficiency was in dire need of improvement. The digital management system could not effectively support new business needs and became the bottleneck of business development. External environment and pressure should not be the reason for us to evade our own problems. We could have and should have done better. So on this point here, he is addressing growing pains of NIO. So the organization has been growing rapidly, not only in China, but actually internationally. And that resulted in various issues not meeting their internal KPIs, so key performance indicators in the area, for example, of here user feedback, but also created difficulties for management, and specifically pointing out here the digital management system. Great companies can turn challenges into opportunities and build their own competitive strengths under pressure. The competition of Smart EV is now in the later stage of the qualifying round. We have to perform exceptionally well to be able to enter the final round. We have to get out of the woods of 2022 as quickly as possible, take a deep breath, stand our ground, keep our sense of urgency, and get to work in an agile and efficient mode. I've highlighted this here again because these are the two most repeated words here, agile and efficient. To embrace even more fierce competition in the next round. We need to be fully prepared for the difficulties ahead in 2023 for an even longer period. People need time to recover from COVID pandemic, while the economy and consumer confidence also require a relatively long process to restore. Consequently, the premium vehicle market will take a hit. In particular, the anti-globalization trend is unlikely to turn the tide, which will bring serious impediments to our global market entry efforts. So here, Li Bin is actually pointing a quite negative outlook for 2023 and basically setting the stage for the various challenges that NIO is going to face. And overly sounds quite dramatic here in how this may possibly affect NIO and what challenges NIO is going to face. As the market competition gets even more fierce and products and technologies become increasingly homogeneous, it's getting harder to gain differentiated competitive edge. We should not have fluke mind or take any chances. Instead, we have to keep a sense of crisis, observe and analyze the dynamics of the operating environment and competition landscape level-headedly, so to adapt to and cope with the daunting challenges down the road. This is really the key paragraph for me in this entire letter, because what Li Bin is doing here, in my interpretation and how I see it here, is he's really setting the tone here and getting people kind of urgently thinking about these challenges and also says, we need to have to keep a sense of crisis. He's kind of resetting the stage here and saying, like, people, we cannot, get laid back and relax that we're now a more or less grown company. No, in fact, we are in crisis mode and we are a startup. We are fighting for our survival, basically. And I think this is a very important message, and I think it's also the right message. Because frankly, for example, I think there are many people that have joined NIO from, let's say, a corporate background. NIO managed to get quite a few people, new employees, for example, from BMW, from Volvo, from other bigger car companies, and they might be used to a more relaxed work environment in which they have high compensations, they have their off time, they are used to maybe slower internal processes, and here, Li Bin frames it quite differently, basically reminding and waking everybody up, like, we're not this type of a company. We are in crisis mode, although we are improving our sales and, revenues are growing, but still, we need to focus here. When the going gets tough, we should be even more steadfast and confident about the future. Our confidence comes from our judgment on the trend. Smart EV has become one of the few highlights of global economy, and the pursuit of sustainable development has also become one of the few global consensuses. Our confidence comes from our systemic innovations of products, services, and communities, our determined investment in core full-stack technologies centered around Smart EV, and our decisive infrastructure deployment of NIO House, NIO Power, and NIO Service Center. Our confidence comes from the vision of becoming a user enterprise and our value-driven organization and outstanding teams. We are on the right side of history and in the right direction. As long as we stay focused on execution, we can achieve our goals. Staying focused on execution means working more agile. The ever-changing market requires us to equip ourselves with agile mindset, process, and capabilities. Once again, the word agile mentioned again and again. He's reminding people they are working in a startup, they need to be agile, not narrow-minded, instead not thinking in hierarchies, in processes. Instead, start thinking for yourself and work into the right direction outlined here in what is actually our vision and what's the context in which we are operating in. Product experience teams need to dive deep into user needs more keenly and insightfully, quickly respond to user feedback in a closed-loop manner. R&D teams need to evaluate and review project progresses at all times to identify issues and make corrections in a timely manner. User development and operation teams need to make dynamic predictions on market demand to provide a timely and accurate planning basis to the industrialization team. Supply chain, manufacturing, and logistics team need to respond more quickly to market volatilities and secure supplies with sunk cost as low as possible. Quality team needs to speed up the quality issue closed-loop resolution to minimize losses, as well as to protect user benefits and product reputations. After sales and service teams need to respond to the user demand more swiftly to improve user experiences. Administration and support teams need to provide suitable and handy support to business teams to enhance efficiency of business operations. Staying focused on execution means working more efficiently. Once again, efficiency is a common theme besides being agile. In 2022, our team and organization continued to scale up, leading to many issues such as unclear roles and responsibilities, unaligned objectives, inadequate processes, and overlapping initiatives. Important, there is significant room for improvement when it comes to efficiency. In 2023, we will face more workload, but overall investments by the company will only increase slightly. So he's setting the tone here, also mentioning that budgets will be cut, or at least not as fruitful as before or big as before. He's mentioning that there are inefficiencies, that there are overlaps. And it is also no surprise that when many people are joining the company, especially the new international teams in Europe, that people are first of all new to the company, that the organization grows, so not everyone knows what the other hand is doing as before when there was a smaller team. And frankly, I think this is a big reason why the trip by Li Bin to Europe was a very, very important initiative. When Li Bin traveled to entire Europe for a couple of days, weeks actually, also for the NIO Berlin event, I think that was very, very important that the Chinese management team came over from China to Europe and was present in Europe at this important stage at the very beginning when this new team was recruited. So we saw pictures of Li Bin partying at the NIO Oslo house with the company. We saw him in discussions with team members everywhere. We saw him himself doing kind of user research, like what is the EV infrastructure in Europe. And so I think that was very, very important during a time where actually travel was still not possible due to the zero COVID policies. He was one of the first Chinese CEOs to go overseas, right? And on the one hand side, this was super important that he was doing that for the European team. But from my experience, on the other side, I think this created a lot of trouble for the organization in China, because basically the most important managers like Jin Lihong, Li Bin, Ted Li, so the head of design, all of them, they went to Europe. They were not there. And from my personal experience working with Chinese team members and also in China, when the most superior managers are not there, the inefficiencies are occurring. I don't want to be too stereotypical there. It's possibly happening in other cultures as well, but mainly in China, where you have to set tasks and lists, to-do lists every day and really control what's happening, like almost on a micromanagement level at some times with some certain employees. This can create lots of inefficiencies if the boss is not there, and that happened during a time when the ET5 was being scaled at the new factory. And also we have also to keep in mind that there was also, besides the European trip, also this part during last year where Shanghai has been in lockdown, and that means also most of the NIO team had to work from home, which is also much more inconvenient and much less effective. Once again, the boss is not there controlling what you can do. And so it was only after the Europe trip when Li Bin came back visiting the factory in Hefei, where they also were locked down. So this all contributed to the trouble. On the one hand side, this was necessary to do, but on the other hand, this has exactly created the issues there, of which Li Bin is speaking here, and where he is pointing out, look, in 2023, this is not gonna happen similarly to this. We're now in a modus operandi, in an operational mode where we have to work on these issues regarding agile work measures and efficiencies. And so he says, I will spend more time on efficiency improvement personally. So he's taking that matter to himself, and would like to urge every colleague to support and join the efforts from the perspective of the company's overall interest, and would welcome all the constructive suggestions for me and the management team on efficiency improvement. Again, this is something which you would like to hear from a shareholder perspective, because of course one of the common criticisms of NIO always is that they are spending too much on various fields of operations. Actually, I've just pointed that one out here in one of my tweets. There was a YouTube comment the other day. Let me see where I have it. On another video. So I hope you can see this, it's very small. Ralf Ostertag here was asking me the question beneath another video. What do you say to people that tell you NIO spends money like a drunken sailor? I dumped the stock last year because of their poor financial skills. So I replied, NIO spends money different than others due to the fact that they don't need to invest capex in factories. Instead, NIO invests in marketing and branding and charging infrastructure. This helped to build a premium positioning with high average sales prices, comparing with Porsche and Mercedes as a Chinese brand. So that's the important part here. This creates a moat that is difficult, if not impossible, to copy for others. See BYD not having such a brand and trying to become more premium, but clearly knowing their how far they can go with their new initiatives there, the latest cars that they've released, and Tesla having to cut prices. So it's very difficult to really have the product plus the brand to really being able to position in a price range and competing where NIO is competing right now. Therefore, I don't mind that NIO is spending this money, but only as long as it is improving such KPIs, so key performance indicators, and as long as they have the money. Currently, NIO is well capitalized, so they have more than $7 billion in the bank account. However, that shouldn't enforce a sluggish spending and big budgets, right? So that's what Li Bin is addressing there as well. Therefore, I think it is the right move for now to invest and monetize some of these aspects later with higher margins and service fees. This model is more akin to an internet platform company like Amazon. And I'm not meaning this by Amazon in terms of Amazon's positioning, but rather how Amazon in the early days of the company, they have just invested every penny that was coming in into infrastructure, into new initiatives. And it took quite a while until investors saw these underlying unit economics indicators and performance indicators. And for Wall Street, this is only getting evident at the point of time when this company then starts stopping on spending on R&D and instead really reaping those free cash flows and profits at some point in time. And I think NIO will be doing that in terms of monetizing their battery as a service, their NIO houses and everything else. But for now, this is where NIO is spending their money, but with a purpose and with a clear goal. And in my point of view, it's really unlocking NIO's positioning and brand, so what they're doing. So you can't grasp it with a Tesla investor or legacy OEM mindset. So these companies function differently, but I see many comments actually from that world looking at NIO and then thinking like, why are they not following in the footsteps of Tesla? It doesn't make sense. You can't invest in this company if that is not, looking where they can cut cost on every piece that's going into the car. And I'm saying that fundamentally, NIO's hardware, business model, and positioning, it's all different, but I'm keep on saying that on the channel. Therefore, no surprise in the short term, this creates worries for investors, but for long-term investors that think NIO can succeed with such a vision, which is not self-evident, it can also not succeed, but if you believe that NIO can succeed in this vision, then the short-term price action in such a growth phase shouldn't be much of a concern. I know it's difficult with all what's going on in the markets. Now back to Li Bin's letter, 2023 is a year of significance to us. We will deliver 5 new vehicles based on the NT2 in the first half of 2023, while R&D of the NT3 platform will be in full swing. All the new strategic businesses will usher in key milestones, and the user deliveries and services in Europe will further accelerate. Our performance in 2023 will directly determine our long-term competitiveness, so every one of us needs to pour our heart into it and go all out. Our journey is a muddy marathon, so don't expect an easy road ahead. In 2023, let us all stay focused and on execution, efficiency, improvement, and keep powering on. William. So as you can see, this letter is in the nature quite negative, right? There is only, let's say, the first paragraph where he kind of sums up what has been achieved, and then also highlights some positive aspects, but most of it is actually quite negative, or picturing a quite challenging year going forward, and also where NIO has not performed well. And what I like about this is that he is addressing those issues. He doesn't paint everything like the blue sky, the vision to be coming. And I think also the timing is quite good in terms of, for 2023, now that we are a bigger company and facing all of those issues, we should really be aware of this. And once again, this is addressed to the employees. We need to work on certain aspects, and as I mentioned, the two main themes here are agile mindset, so this is more a startup mode, and efficiency, so that's more on the cost side. This should be good news in shareholders' ears, because it means that NIO will try to achieve a higher return on capital with their spendings, maybe cut back on some unnecessary stuff like overlapping things. This should hopefully also, he's giving the outlook, kind of show a top maybe in the spending of maybe some of these initiatives, also like infrastructure, that are frankly necessary. However, also pointing out here, like, look guys, we are in a crisis mode. We haven't succeeded yet. We could still go out of business. It's nowhere near that we gonna succeed with our vision and our products. So we have to be cautious around this. And that is hopefully a good sign going forward, that it will bring improvements in all of these areas mentioned. If you're being critical, what's maybe missing in there is also a little bit more of a self-criticism for the management, because they are the ones who have set those targets and ultimately didn't reach them. So that's ultimately to blame on the management, right? Of course, some of this is out of hand, but certainly it's the issue of the management, how you set up the supply chain. It's issue of the management to set those targets the way they are and communicating them. We had the incident with the December deliveries, where the co-founder and president, Jin Li-hong, basically pointed towards the 26,000 deliveries, or 300,000 cars being delivered in total by NIO by the end of the year. That didn't happen. That was a miscommunication there. And so they are making mistakes for sure as well. And I guess they are now also getting this kind of feedback from the market. So therefore, this letter shows that they are recognizing this and they are working on this. And this should be more than just, blah, blah, blah. This needs to be filled with actual responses, and we'll see how well they are able to execute on that going forward. So to me, this overall is the right thing to do. I was happy to read this letter. To be honest, it would be bad if they are sugarcoating more. Of course, this is also, let's say, what it's being expected from a manager to do, especially going into the new year. But I think it's also showing a signal to the markets going forward. So what are your comments on this? Let me know in the comments, please. I'm happy to read that and maybe make a follow-up on this matter as well. I'm also thinking of making a video about my impressions from, I have certain touch points with NIO, for example, NIO House or elsewhere, where I get to know how this, how are the people working for this organization are thinking. What's my impressions there? I think I'm gonna possibly just share that one with my Patreon community. By the way, thank you for your ongoing support, because maybe that's not the right thing to make this more public, but just how I read the company and how I think that they can actually respond to such kind of a setting the stage. Because once again, this letter was clearly addressed at the employees, not at us. And so it's up for the employees to work on that and to execute on that. Thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next video.